Welcome to Life Stories. What if everything you thought you knew about your life was about to change in an instant? Imagine waking up every day, feeling invisible, and then suddenly someone powerful notices you. Someone who can give you everything you've ever dreamed of. But there's a catch. The deeper you go, the more you realize that nothing is as it seems. The life you fought so hard to build is at risk, and the price of success might be your very soul. This isn't just a story about ambition. It's about choices, trust, and the thin line between survival and sacrifice. Are you ready to find out what happens when one woman steps into a world she never thought she belonged to? Let's see how far Riley is willing to go and what it will cost her. Riley Davis had always been invisible. It wasn't a choice, more of a survival mechanism. It had to be that way. As a cleaner at one of the most luxurious hotels in New York, the Grandview Hotel, she was as much a part of the background as the gold-framed mirrors that lined the grand hallways. But every morning, after a restless night of trying to ignore the cracks in her tiny apartment ceiling and the weight of unpaid bills, Riley would force herself to remember her grandmother's words. One step forward, Riley, one step forward. She had gotten used to the ritual of it, the early mornings, the cold showers, the endless mopping of marble floors under the harsh fluorescent lights. The guests would come and go, their expensive perfume lingering in the air long after they'd left. Riley would watch them as they drifted through the lobby, in suits that whispered of power and privilege, of lives that were untouchable. She wasn't one of them. She never would be. But she wasn't bitter. Not really. She just knew her place. Until, one afternoon, her life shifted in a way she could never have anticipated. It started with a phone call. She was cleaning near the penthouse suite when she overheard a conversation that was not meant for her ears. Three men in tailored suits walked briskly down the hallway, their voices a low murmur. But one stood out to her. Blake Harrison, the CEO of the Grandview Hotel, the man who practically owned the city. He had that air about him, distant, cold, untouchable. His gaze barely flicked in her direction, yet there was something in the way he paused, just for a split second when he walked past her. It was as if he knew exactly who she was. She thought nothing of it, until her phone buzzed. It was a text from her old professor, Dr. Roberts, who had mentored her through her passion for languages. "You passed, Riley. Call me when you can." Her heart raced. She had been studying Dutch on and off for years, trying to improve herself, trying to escape the heavy weight of her circumstances. She dialed the number immediately, her voice trembling as she spoke in fluent Dutch. "Did I really pass?" "Not only passed, Riley," Dr. Roberts responded, his voice full of pride. "You're now certified at a professional fluency level. Congratulations." Tears filled her eyes as she laughed. She had done it. She had finally achieved something for herself, something beyond the mundane. But just as she was about to hang up, the door to the staff lounge creaked open. Riley turned, startled. Blake Harrison stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on her. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, his voice smooth, almost amused. "Were you speaking Dutch?" Riley froze. She fumbled with her phone, scrambling to end the call. "I'm so sorry, sir. It's just a call on my break." Blake stepped further into the room, studying her. "Where did you learn it?" Riley, flustered, avoided his gaze. "I studied languages in college. It's my passion." Blake didn't seem to notice her discomfort. He just nodded, as if testing the sound of her name. "Riley?" he repeated, almost thoughtfully. "Thank you for your time. Enjoy your lunch." The encounter left her feeling exposed, like she had stepped out of the shadows for a moment too long. But surely, she reasoned, it meant nothing. After all, he was Blake Harrison, the billionaire who ran the Grandview. She was just Riley, the invisible woman who cleaned the floors. The next day, she was called into human resources. Her heart sank as she entered the office. Was she in trouble? Had someone complained about her? "Miss Davis, please sit down," Mrs. Green, the HR director, said, not looking up from her paperwork. "Mr. Harrison has made a very unusual request. He wants you reassigned, effective immediately. You will be moving into a newly created position." Riley blinked. "What position?" "Assistant in International Guest Relations. You will be working with our high-profile guests, particularly those who don't speak English. You'll assist with translation, cultural coordination, and hospitality. It's a very important role. The words took a moment to register. Wait, is this real? Mrs. Green smiled faintly, her expression unreadable. It is, Miss Davis. Mr. Harrison says your talents are wasted where you are. He's requesting you start today. He'd like to see you in his office after lunch. Riley walked out of the HR office, her mind a blur. She passed by the familiar hallways, the plush carpets, and the ornate chandeliers. But now, everything felt different. She was no longer the invisible cleaner. She was stepping into a world she never thought she would belong to. The world of power, influence, and secrets. What had Blake Harrison seen in her? Why her? Of all people, what was this really about? As she made her way to Blake's office, her heart pounded in her chest. There was a thrill in her veins now, a curiosity, a tension that was both exciting and terrifying. She had spent her entire life watching others climb the ladder of success from the sidelines, but now she had a chance to climb it herself. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for what was waiting at the top. What does Blake Harrison see in Riley? Is it truly her talent, or is there something more at play here? Will Riley choose to embrace this unexpected opportunity, or will she walk away and remain in the shadows of her old life? The doors to the unknown had just cracked open, and Riley was about to step through them, into a world far more dangerous and enticing than she ever could have imagined. The question is, will she be able to navigate it without losing herself? The truth, like the hotel itself, was much more complicated than it appeared, and Riley was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. Riley stood in front of Blake's office door, her hand hovering just inches from the polished handle. The sound of her heartbeat thudded in her chest, a steady, insistent rhythm that drowned out the distant hum of the hotel. She had cleaned this hallway so many times, passing by these same walls, the same doors, but now they seemed like a foreign land. Every inch of this place was suddenly unfamiliar, the air thicker, charged with an energy she couldn't quite place. She had spent the last 24 hours trying to make sense of what was happening. A job that had once been nothing more than a means to survive had become a door to something else entirely. A door she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. Blake had made it clear that her life was about to change. But what did that really mean? What did it mean for her, a woman who had spent most of her life trying to disappear in the crowd, to suddenly be seen, be noticed, to be given the chance to be something more? As she entered the office, she was greeted by a room bathed in soft light. Blake was standing by the window, his back to her, gazing out at the city skyline. The space between them felt vast, like she was stepping into a world where she didn't belong. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that there was more to this than he was letting on. "Riley, come in." Blake's voice was smooth, calm, and yet there was a weight to it that made her nervous. She stepped inside, her shoes clicking softly on the marble floor. Blake turned to face her, his expression unreadable. He looked the same, polished, composed, powerful, but there was something different in the way his eyes lingered on her, a quiet intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You look well," he said, his gaze scanning her new attire. "I see you're fitting into the role quite nicely." Riley nodded, unsure of how to respond. She wasn't just nervous anymore. She was starting to feel a strange sense of unease. "Sit," Blake said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She hesitated, but then sank into it, the leather creaking under her weight. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Blake's eyes seemed to be studying her, as if searching for something. Riley shifted uncomfortably under his gaze, feeling the weight of his expectations pressing down on her. "You've done well so far, Riley," Blake finally said, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "You've proven yourself invaluable to me, to the company. But now, I need to know something from you." Riley's stomach tightened. She wasn't sure what he meant, but she could feel it. A change in the air, a shift that was both subtle and overwhelming. Blake leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk, his fingers steepled in front of his mouth. "You're talented, Riley. You have potential, but I need someone I can trust. Someone who understands not just languages, but people. And I think you're that person." Riley's heart skipped a beat. He was talking about something bigger, something far beyond the scope of what she'd been hired for. She had been brought in to help with translations, to coordinate cultural affairs. But this felt different. This felt like an invitation into his world. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Blake's smile was thin, almost like he knew something she didn't. "There's a deal in the works, a big one, and I need someone with your unique skills to help me seal it. But it's more than that. It's about power, influence, and I need to know if you're willing to take that step." Riley's mind raced. What was he asking of her? Was this the opportunity she'd been waiting for? The chance to change her life forever? Or was this a trap? A game she didn't understand? "I don't know if I can," Riley said, her voice faltering. "I don't have the experience, Blake. I don't know the rules of these high-stakes deals. I'm just a cleaner. I don't belong in your world." Blake's eyes softened for a moment, but only for a moment. He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping right in front of her. There was something magnetic about him, something that made it hard to look away. "That's where you're wrong, Riley. You've always belonged here. You just didn't know it yet." His words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Riley could feel a shift inside her, a spark of hope and fear intertwined. She had spent so long convincing herself that she was nothing more than a bystander, a shadow, a woman with no future. But now, here she was, being handed the chance to be more, to be someone important. But at what cost? What was Blake asking of her? Was this a path she could walk without losing herself? Before she could process her thoughts, Blake's voice cut through the silence again, more urgent this time. "There's more at stake here than just a job, Riley. You'll be making decisions that affect millions. You'll have power, and you'll be with me. But you need to decide. Now, do you have the strength to handle this?" Riley stood up, her hands trembling. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to embrace this new version of herself, to step into this life that had always seemed so far out of reach. But deep down, something held her back. She looked Blake in the eye, her heart racing, the weight of the decision pressing down on her chest. I need some time," she said, her voice shaky. Blake didn't respond right away. He just studied her, his gaze intense and piercing. Finally he nodded, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of disappointment, maybe even impatience. "Of course. But remember, Riley, opportunities like this don't come often. You'll have to decide quickly." As Riley turned to leave the office, her mind was spinning. She was standing at the edge of something monumental. But what would it cost her to take that step? Would you take the opportunity to change your life, knowing it might come with sacrifices? What's more important to you? Success or staying true to who you are? The weight of the decision was suffocating. And as Riley walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the choice she was about to make would change everything, for better or for worse. What would happen when the real price of success revealed itself? Riley had never been one to make decisions on impulse. She was a woman of careful consideration, of thinking things through until her mind ached from the weight of the options laid before her. But tonight felt different. She stood on the balcony of her apartment, staring out at the city that had once seemed so distant, so unattainable. Now it felt like it was hers for the taking. But at what cost? She had spent the last few days wrestling with Blake's offer. His words echoed in her mind. "You've always belonged here. You just didn't know it yet." Was he right? Did she belong in his world? Or was she just a pawn in his game of power, a person to be used and discarded when she had outlived her usefulness? The decision she had to make wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about everything she had ever wanted for herself. The chance to prove she was more than just the sum of her circumstances, more than a woman cleaning the floors of a grand hotel. She could feel the pull of that ambition, that burning desire to step into the light and never go back. But in the back of her mind, there was a quiet whisper of doubt. Was she losing herself in the process? Was she becoming something she had never wanted to be? Someone willing to sacrifice their soul for success? The phone in her hand buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Blake. I need your answer, Riley. I'm waiting. She took a deep breath, staring out at the twinkling lights of the city. There was no going back now. If she said yes, her life would never be the same. If she said no, she would return to the life she knew, one that felt safe but suffocating. With a trembling hand, she typed her reply, I'm in. The next day, Riley walked into the Grandview Hotel for the last time as a cleaner. She had made her decision. As she entered the elevator, the weight of her choice settled heavily on her shoulders. She was ready, or so she told herself. The doors opened to the lobby, and Blake was waiting for her, as if he had been expecting her the whole time. His gaze softened when he saw her, and for the first time since they had met, she saw something human in his eyes. Something real. Riley? He said, his voice low, almost tender. You're here. She nodded, a mix of nerves and excitement swirling inside her. I'm here. He smiled faintly, as though he knew this was a turning point for both of them. Let's get started then. They walked together through the corridors of the hotel, now a place she knew all too well. This time, though, she wasn't walking through as a cleaner. She was walking through as someone who had a voice, who had power, who had purpose. Over the next few weeks, Riley quickly proved herself in the new role. She was a natural. Her fluency in Dutch and her understanding of cultures made her an invaluable asset. The business deals she helped broker, the guests she coordinated with, everything she touched seemed to flourish under her careful attention. But through it all, one thing gnawed at her, the connection she had with Blake. It was undeniable. She had spent enough time with him now to see the man beneath the CEO facade. He was a man who had risen from nothing, who had built an empire, but lost a part of himself in the process. He had never known real love, not in the way that mattered. He had never had someone see him for who he was, not just for what he could offer. But Riley didn't know if she could be that person for him. She wasn't sure if she could give him everything he wanted without losing herself. Her heart ached with the unspoken tension between them. She had come so far, but was she truly ready to give everything up, her past, her future, for him? It was a question she couldn't answer. Not yet. One evening, after a particularly tense negotiation, Blake invited her to dinner at his private residence. Riley had been avoiding this moment, but she knew it was inevitable. There was a distance between them now, a chasm of unspoken words and unexplored feelings. She didn't know what was going to happen tonight, but she knew it would change everything. Blake's house wasn't what she had expected. It wasn't cold or grand, but warm and lived in, with old books lining the walls and soft, dim lighting casting shadows across the room. The scent of garlic and fresh herbs filled the air. It was a home, not a palace. He was cooking, not some expensive chef-prepared meal, but pasta, something simple, something personal. She watched him move around the kitchen, his movements fluid and easy, as if this was where he truly felt comfortable. Sit, he said, his voice gentle as he placed the plate in front of her. They ate in silence for a few moments, the weight of everything between them palpable. Then, Blake set down his fork, his gaze fixed on her. Riley, he said, his voice soft, almost vulnerable, I need to know if you can trust me. If you can trust us, what I'm offering isn't just a job, it's a partnership, a future. Riley felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected him to say that. She had thought he was just using her. But now, sitting here with him, she realized how wrong she had been. He wasn't offering her just a future in business. He was offering her a future with him. But could she trust him? Could she trust herself? Could she really walk away from everything she had built up until now and give it all to him? Was she ready to be part of his world, knowing how easily she could lose herself in it? The question hung between them, unanswered. Riley's heart raced as she searched for the words to speak, but none came. Blake reached out, his hand resting on hers. I don't want to lose you, Riley, he said, his voice raw. Not after everything we've shared. Not after everything you've shown me. Tears filled her eyes. She had never let anyone see her this way, vulnerable, unsure. But with Blake, she felt something she had never felt before, a sense of belonging, a sense of home. I'm scared, she whispered. Scared of losing myself, scared of giving everything up. Blake squeezed her hand, his gaze unwavering. I won't let you lose yourself. Not ever. For the first time, Riley believed him. The decision was no longer just about career or success, it was about love. It was about finding a way to be with someone who saw her for who she truly was, not just as the woman who cleaned floors or the woman who spoke Dutch. It was about stepping into the light together. How do you think Riley's journey will unfold from here? Do you believe she made the right choice in trusting Blake? If you enjoyed this story, comment 100 to show your love for this journey. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Share this video with your friends who believe in dreams coming true. And thank you for being a part of the Life Stories community.